Virgo's mind is often described as sharp, analytical, and precise, but beneath this reputation lies a depth few ever truly see. To the outside world, Virgo appears calm, collected, and sometimes even distant. Yet within, there is an ocean of complexity. Thoughts flow endlessly, weaving connections between details others overlook, carrying both the burden of vigilance and the blessing of clarity. This hidden dimension is why so many misunderstand Virgo's psychology. They see only the surface, organized, efficient, reliable, without realizing the inner layers of sensitivity and self-awareness that drive these qualities. The truth is that Virgo is not simple. It carries contradictions within its core. Strength mixed with fragility, logic fused with intuition, silence filled with thoughts louder than any words. What others interpret as indifference is often deep observation. What appears as control is often a shield against inner chaos. This unseen reality creates a paradox that defines Virgo's psychological depth, always appearing steady while silently carrying storms. Because of this, Virgo often feels unseen or misjudged. Its mind works so quietly that people forget how much effort lies behind each decision, each act of service, each gesture of order. To be misunderstood becomes almost natural for Virgo, and yet, within that misunderstanding lies its secret power. Those who live without knowing themselves may wander, but Virgo, even in struggle, is always mapping the terrain of its inner world. This psychological depth matters because it is both a gift and a challenge. It allows Virgo to anticipate, to plan, to heal, and to protect. But it also leaves Virgo vulnerable to exhaustion, to self-doubt, to cycles of silence where the mind becomes a prison. To acknowledge this inner reality is to honor the truth that Virgo is far more than what it shows. The surface is only the mask. The true story lives in the thoughts that never stop moving. And so we arrive at the first of the three hidden psychological truths, one that shapes nearly every decision Virgo makes. It is the silent perfectionism that drives the sign to excel while simultaneously battling its own inner critic, a truth that explains why Virgo often appears calm, yet rarely feels satisfied within. The first psychological truth about Virgo that rarely finds words is its silent perfectionism. Unlike open ambition or loud pursuit of success, Virgo's standards operate quietly, almost invisibly, shaping every choice and every action from within. This perfectionism is not about showing off to the world, but about living up to an internal measure so precise that even victories can feel incomplete. Virgo may achieve what others see as extraordinary, yet in its own mind, the flaws stand out far more than the accomplishments. The praise given by others is often filtered through a lens that focuses only on what could have been improved. This truth makes Virgo both powerful and vulnerable. On one hand, it pushes the sign to refine, to polish, to rise above mediocrity. Virgo rarely settles because it is driven by the pursuit of what feels right, not just what looks good. On the other hand, this same drive can leave Virgo restless, always chasing an ideal that seems forever just out of reach. Silent perfectionism whispers, "Not enough yet," even when enough has already been achieved. The psychological impact of this is deep. Virgo develops resilience because it constantly challenges itself. Yet it also carries heavy stress, for the bar it sets is often impossibly high. Others may misinterpret this perfectionism as criticism directed outward, but in truth, it begins within. The sharp words Virgo sometimes directs toward others are reflections of the same harsh standards it applies to itself. This makes the inner critic a constant companion, one that can motivate but also wound. Still, awareness transforms this truth. When Virgo recognizes that its perfectionism stems not from failure, but from devotion, it can soften the harsh voice into guidance. Instead of condemning every mistake, Virgo can learn to see mistakes as steps in refinement. Silent perfectionism then shifts from being a prison into being a path of mastery, one where growth replaces shame and progress outweighs impossible ideals. And as this transformation takes root, Virgo begins to notice another hidden pattern within its psychology, one that fuels this perfectionism and often turns strength into struggle. It is the wound of overthinking, the endless loop of thoughts that tries to prevent mistakes, but often becomes the very source of inner unrest. The second psychological truth that lives quietly within Virgo is the wound of overthinking. Few minds work as tirelessly, as restlessly, or as persistently as Virgos. Long after others have moved on from a conversation or decision, Virgo is still replaying details, analyzing tone, dissecting choices, and calculating outcomes. This mental vigilance is not random. It is a defense mechanism born from the desire to prevent mistakes, to anticipate problems before they happen, to guard against the discomfort of chaos. To Virgo, overthinking feels like safety, but in practice, it often becomes a trap. Picture Virgo lying awake at night, replaying a single sentence spoken hours ago, wondering if it was misunderstood, questioning if it should have been phrased differently. Or imagine Virgo preparing for a small event by mapping every possible detail, fearing that missing one element will lead to disorder. These examples reveal how deeply overthinking threads itself through Virgo's psychology. It is not laziness or lack of trust. It is a survival instinct, one that seeks control to soothe the uncertainty of life. Yet what begins as protection often creates exhaustion. The mind never rests, so peace feels fleeting. Small decisions become burdens, and past moments never fully release their hold. Virgo's overthinking creates cycles of self-doubt, fueling perfectionism while draining energy. Others may misunderstand this as worry or unnecessary stress, but for Virgo, it feels like responsibility, as if failing to analyze every angle would mean failing those who rely on them. Still, hidden within this wound is a blessing. Overthinking sharpens awareness. It allows Virgo to notice patterns others overlook, to anticipate problems before they appear, to create solutions that seem almost prophetic. The very trait that exhausts Virgo also makes it indispensable, especially in environments where precision matters. The transformation comes when Virgo learns to channel this mental energy into wisdom rather than worry, using it to illuminate instead of to spiral. This psychological truth connects seamlessly to the next. For behind the restless mind lies another hidden reality, one that explains Virgo's careful distance in emotional matters. It is the truth of emotional reserve, the armor that protects a heart capable of deep love, but cautious of exposing its vulnerability. The third psychological truth about Virgo is its emotional reserve, a quality often misinterpreted as coldness, but in reality a carefully constructed armor. Virgo feels deeply, often more than it lets on, but chooses restraint as a form of protection. This reserve is not born from indifference, but from the fear of vulnerability, the worry that showing too much emotion will invite judgment, rejection, or instability. To outsiders, Virgo appears composed even in the face of intense experiences, yet within, there may be storms quietly contained beneath the surface. This emotional restraint has roots in psychology. Virgo learns early that control brings safety. By holding emotions in check, Virgo maintains order both internally and externally. A composed exterior becomes a shield, guarding the sensitive inner self from being exposed in environments that may not understand or appreciate it. This is why Virgo can stand in situations where others break down, appearing steady while carrying a weight that few could bear silently. The paradox is that behind this calm exterior lies a profound capacity for love, loyalty, and tenderness. Virgo often feels emotions with greater depth than it reveals, cherishing small acts of kindness, remembering words long after they were spoken, holding space for those it cares about even without declaring it openly. Yet because these emotions are hidden, others may mistake Virgo's silence for distance, when in truth it is a sign of protection. Still, this armor can become too rigid. When Virgo holds back for too long, it risks isolation, building walls so strong that even genuine connection struggles to break through. The challenge is not to abandon reserve, but to learn balance, to know when the shield is needed and when it is safe to let the heart breathe freely. And when Virgo dares to lower its guard, what emerges is not weakness but authenticity. The vulnerability once feared becomes the very bridge that deepens relationships, proving that strength and sensitivity can exist together. This revelation uncovers yet another hidden layer of Virgo's psychology. For beneath the perfectionism, the overthinking, and the emotional armor lives something tender and often forgotten. The inner child, soft and sensitive, longing for acceptance and care. Beneath Virgo's layers of perfectionism, overthinking, and emotional reserve lies the hidden presence of the inner child. This is the part of Virgo that remains tender, sensitive, and deeply affected by the smallest gestures. While the outer image may show competence, responsibility, and control, inside there exists a softer voice longing for safety, validation, and gentleness. This inner child explains much of Virgo's behavior. It is the reason why criticism cuts so deeply, why Virgo clings to order, and why small acts of kindness are remembered long after they occur. The psychology of this hidden child reveals itself in subtle ways. Virgo may downplay compliments but secretly treasure them. It may seem unaffected by rejection, yet quietly carry the sting for years. It may handle responsibilities with grace, but feel overwhelmed when the weight becomes too heavy, retreating inward where no one can see. To those around Virgo, these reactions might seem disproportionate, but they are echoes of the inner child still seeking reassurance. This hidden part of Virgo is both strength and vulnerability. On one hand, it fuels compassion, empathy, and the ability to care for others with sincerity. On the other hand, it creates fragility, for wounds to this inner child often linger longer than Virgo admits. Healing begins not by silencing or ignoring this part, but by acknowledging it, offering the same patience and gentleness that Virgo so easily gives to others but often withholds from itself. In practice, this means allowing space for imperfection without judgment, celebrating small victories instead of dismissing them, and embracing moments of play and spontaneity that reconnect Virgo with joy. The inner child does not disappear with age. It waits to be recognized, held, and loved. When Virgo honors this hidden truth, a new harmony is born. The stern inner critic softens, overthinking loses its grip, and emotional reserve eases into trust. The revelation of this inner child creates a bridge to another psychological paradox within Virgo. For much of the struggle with perfection, overthinking, and restraint ties back to a deeper pattern: the need for control. This need shapes Virgo's choices, provides stability, yet often becomes the very thing that restricts its peace, leading to the paradox of control that governs much of its hidden psychology. The paradox of control is one of the deepest psychological truths shaping Virgo's inner world. On the surface, it looks like a strength, an ability to organize, plan, and anticipate what others overlook. Virgo thrives when creating systems, mapping out details, and ensuring that every part fits neatly into its place. But beneath this drive for structure lies a truth few acknowledge. The need for control is often a survival strategy, born not out of superiority, but out of fear. For Virgo, control creates safety, and without it, the unknown feels overwhelming. This paradox reveals itself in countless everyday situations. Virgo may clean and reorganize a space before an event, not simply for appearance, but to soothe the anxious voice that whispers of possible chaos. It may plan conversations ahead, rehearsing words in silence, just to avoid the discomfort of saying the wrong thing. It may schedule every detail of a day, not because it loves rigidity, but because unpredictability feels like a threat. Control brings calm, yet at the same time, the very effort to hold everything tightly often creates the stress Virgo is trying to avoid. The irony is clear. What begins as a method of protection becomes a source of exhaustion. The mind spins faster, the body tenses, and the heart longs for release. Virgo then faces the dilemma of its own paradox. Control provides temporary relief, but at the cost of inner peace. In its most extreme form, This pattern can create cycles of frustration, where even success feels hollow because it was born from pressure rather than freedom. Yet within this paradox lies the seed of transformation. When Virgo learns that true stability is not found in controlling every detail, but in trusting the flow of life, the need for rigid control softens into graceful order. Structure remains, but it breathes. Plans still exist, but they no longer choke spontaneity. Control turns from a cage into a framework, from fear into foundation. And it is here, within the delicate balance between structure and surrender, that Virgo's psychology reveals yet another hidden dimension: its loyalty in relationships. For the same need for order that drives Virgo inward also extends outward, shaping its devotion and responsibility toward those it loves, creating bonds both powerful and heavy to carry. In relationships, Virgo's psychology reveals a loyalty that is both a strength and a weight. This devotion is not shallow or fleeting. It is woven from a deep sense of responsibility and care. When Virgo chooses to love, whether in friendship, family, or partnership, it does so with consistency that rarely wavers. This loyalty stems from the same inner wiring that seeks order and stability. Virgo feels that protecting others, standing by them, and keeping promises are not optional but sacred duties. To those who experience it, Virgo's loyalty feels like a fortress. Yet beneath this devotion lies a hidden truth. Loyalty is often mixed with fear of abandonment. Virgo may remain in relationships long after they have become draining, not because love is still alive, but because walking away feels like betrayal. This psychological pattern is rooted in the need for safety. By holding on, Virgo convinces itself that stability remains intact, even if the cost is personal well-being. The same force that makes Virgo a faithful companion can also bind it to situations where its spirit slowly erodes. Examples of this truth appear in the way Virgo prioritizes others before itself. It stays late to support a friend, even when exhausted. It sacrifices its own desires to keep peace in a relationship. It carries burdens silently, believing that loyalty requires self-denial. Others may admire Virgo's dedication, but they rarely see the silent battles that come with it. The weight of giving more than receiving. The quiet ache of feeling unseen while remaining steadfast. Yet loyalty, when balanced, becomes one of Virgo's greatest powers. It builds unshakable trust, creates bonds that endure trials, and offers loved ones a sense of security few can match. The transformation comes when Virgo realizes that love is enough without self-erasure, that true loyalty does not require sacrificing identity. To stand beside someone does not mean to disappear within them. And as Virgo learns this balance, the hidden shadow of its psychology comes into clearer focus. For much of what others experience as outward criticism is in fact the reflection of Virgo's inner critic, projected onto the world. This next truth reveals how self-judgment shapes the way Virgo interacts with others, often misunderstood but ultimately a path toward compassion. The shadow side of Virgo's psychology often appears through criticism, a trait many notice but few understand. What looks like judgment directed at others is, in truth, a projection of Virgo's own inner critic. No one scrutinizes Virgo more than Virgo itself. Every flaw seen outside is first magnified within. Every mistake in another is a mirror of the impossible standards Virgo quietly applies to its own life. This is why criticism flows so naturally. It is not born of arrogance, but of familiarity with the relentless voice inside. To those on the receiving end, Virgo's words may feel sharp, precise, and sometimes harsh. Yet beneath them lies a strange intention: to correct, to refine, to improve. Virgo notices details that others overlook, and because of its perfectionist wiring, it feels compelled to point them out. In its mind, this is an act of service, a way of guiding others toward better outcomes. But without compassion, this gift of discernment transforms into a wound, leaving others feeling judged instead of supported. The irony is that Virgo suffers most from this dynamic. Living under the weight of its own inner critic, it often battles feelings of inadequacy, even when surrounded by evidence of success. By projecting criticism outward, Virgo temporarily shifts the burden, yet the core struggle remains inside. This cycle can create distance in relationships, where loved ones misinterpret Virgo's standards as rejection rather than reflection. Still, within this shadow lies the potential for profound growth. When Virgo recognizes the true source of its criticism, it can soften its voice both inward and outward. Self-compassion becomes the key, allowing Virgo to replace judgment with understanding. What once felt like harsh correction then transforms into constructive guidance, offered with kindness instead of pressure. The same sharp eye that once sought flaws becomes capable of seeing potential, encouraging growth rather than demanding it. And as this transformation takes place, Virgo begins to notice the shift within itself. The heavy voice of the inner critic loses its grip, replaced by a gentler dialogue. With this healing comes a new chapter, one marked by signs that Virgo is not only surviving its psychological patterns, but also integrating them into wisdom, stepping into a more balanced and authentic way of being. Healing for Virgo does not arrive in dramatic flashes, but in subtle, undeniable signs. The first clue is peace with imperfection. Where once Virgo's perfectionism demanded flawless execution, healing allows mistakes to exist without shame. A task left unfinished no longer feels like failure, but like part of a greater process. This peace signals that Virgo is loosening the grip of the inner critic, turning judgment into acceptance. It is not about lowering standards, but about embracing humanity, recognizing that growth often comes through the cracks. Another sign of healing is the quieting of overthinking. The loops of constant analysis begin to soften, replaced by moments of stillness. Virgo discovers it can release control without collapse, that silence can be restful instead of filled with spirals of doubt. Dreams may come lighter, nights more restful, and the urge to dissect every detail fades into trust. This shift shows that Virgo is learning to transform worry into wisdom, using its sharp mind not as a prison, but as a lantern. Emotional openness also emerges as a mark of progress. Where once Virgo held feelings in reserve, healing encourages vulnerability. Laughter flows more freely, tears are shared without shame, and words of affection are spoken without hesitation. This willingness to reveal the inner self marks a profound change, proving that the armor once worn for protection is no longer needed in every battle. Synchronicities often accompany these shifts. Numbers like 111, 222, or 777 may appear as inner confirmations, aligning Virgo's awareness with the sense that its journey is being guided. These signs are not coincidences, but reflections of harmony between mind, heart, and spirit. They serve as gentle reminders that healing is not only personal but also spiritual. Behavioral changes complete the picture. Virgo begins to rest without guilt, to share ideas without fear of rejection, to prioritize joy alongside duty. The once hidden inner child steps forward, bringing spontaneity and lightness. What once felt like survival becomes genuine living. And from these signs emerges the final revelation, that Virgo's psychology is not a burden to be carried, but a prophecy to be fulfilled. A sacred design meant to shape not only its own path, but also the way it guides and inspires others. This final chapter brings together the truths into one vision of purpose and empowerment. The journey through Virgo's psychology leads to a final revelation. What once felt like flaws are, in truth, sacred designs. The perfectionism that seemed like a curse is actually devotion to refinement. The overthinking that caused sleepless nights is also the mind's way of protecting and preparing. The emotional reserve that looked like distance is armor forged to preserve tenderness. These truths are not accidents. They are the map of Virgo's soul, carefully crafted to transform struggle into wisdom. This is the prophecy of Virgo's mind, to rise not by escaping its patterns, but by embracing and transmuting them. This prophecy frames Virgo not as broken, but as chosen, entrusted with a mind that sees deeply, feels precisely, and heals silently. Through its psychological truths, Virgo carries tools that others may never develop: the ability to spot patterns, to create order from chaos, to remain steady when emotions swirl. These qualities make Virgo the silent strategist, the one who protects, guides, and uplifts without demanding the spotlight. Far from weakness, its inner battles become its greatest strength, for they carve resilience and compassion into every layer of being. Imagine Virgo walking with lanterns forged from these truths. One lantern glows with clarity, born from perfectionism transformed into mastery. Another burns with wisdom, sparked by overthinking refined into foresight. A third shines with tenderness, lit when emotional reserve softens into authentic connection. Together, these lanterns illuminate a path not just for Virgo, but for those who walk beside it. In this way, the personal psychology of Virgo becomes collective prophecy, guiding others toward healing and balance. The decree that seals this vision is simple: I embrace my mind, I embrace my truth. Spoken with intention, these words shift perception from burden to blessing, aligning Virgo with the higher purpose behind its psychology. No longer defined by shadows alone, Virgo steps into the fullness of its role as a healer, a thinker, and a guardian of detail and devotion. And so the story comes full circle. The three psychological truths that nobody talks about are no longer secrets, but revelations, each carrying the power to liberate and transform. Virgo's mind, once seen as restless or rigid, now stands revealed as its greatest gift, a vessel of precision, compassion, and divine design, protected and empowered for the path it was always meant to walk.